Hello YouTube! Scott here, and I'm back with an instant review of Marvel's Hawkeye. Episode 5 is entitled Ronin. And obviously, with a title like that, you expect to see some Ronin stuff. And you do, but I don't want to get into spoilers just yet. I went into this episode with a couple of suppositions. I know assuming things is never a good idea, but I mean, this is a TV show, and there is kind of a formula they have to follow. So I started by assuming that even though Clint had pushed Kate away at the end of the last episode, by the end of this one, they would most likely be back together and ready to face whatever final showdown's coming for them. I also thought we might get a little bit more stuff cleared up as to who's in charge, what's going on with this whole thing, who hired Yelena, Natasha's sister, because we were going to need to know that by the end, of course. Whether or not I was right, well, we'll get into that in the spoilers soon. But on the whole, not a bad episode. You had some really touching moments, some nice parallels between characters that you wouldn't expect, a fight scene that was not like over the top, but really well done, a little bit surprising, as I'm going to note in a minute. But anyway, how about we get to the spoilers, huh? Now, we start this episode with a cold open that's all about Yelena. It's back in 2018, and she infiltrates the house of another Black Widow assassin, and her associate get the drop on her and use that gas on her to, reverse her brainwashing, like they did in the Black Widow movie, which I was not that happy to see, I have to admit, because knowing what that is presupposes that you would have seen the Black Widow movie. So if you didn't, you have no idea what's going on. But, I mean, they've gone through the entire MCU at this point, so I don't think they really care how far along you are in the continuity. It's basically be all caught up or be left behind. Doesn't matter. Anyway, this woman, Ava, says that she's not brainwashed. She's been working as an assassin. And in the midst of the conversation, Yelena gets up to use the bathroom, and that's the point where she gets snapped. Like, you literally watch her fade out of existence and then right back in 5 years later. And everything's changed. Ava's married now and has adopted a daughter. And Yelena, of course, she's ready to be an assassin if need be, but first she needs to find out what happens to Natasha. But anyway, after that, we get the opening titles and the previously on, and that just brings it back to a thing I noticed about time management. This episode proper starts about 6 minutes and 20 seconds in. Now, I forget exactly when I paused to look at the time in the first place, but this episode in total is maybe 42 minutes long. So you cut out that 6 minutes, and that leaves, 36 minutes. But there's usually about 5 minutes left for the credits at the end, so this whole thing was about 31 minutes long, and it's actually kind of surprising the amount that they put into 31 minutes. But from that point, we pick up right where the last episode left off. Kate goes back to the penthouse, she's all banged up, and her mom sees her and she's worried. And, Kate tells her that Clint basically told her to stay away from him, and Eleanor goes into just full single parent mode. She doesn't care about any of that, she's just glad that Kate's okay. And while she's helping her bandage her wounds, Kate tells her, that she needs to look into Jack herself, because he owns a company that's controlling the Tracksuit Mafia. And this scene of Eleanor, seeing to Kate's wounds really parallels the very next scene, which is Kazi seeing to Echo's wounds. And he's telling her in another scene, which is really well done because most of it is in American Sign Language, that he thinks Maya should back off. She doesn't want to, but he tells her that, after they kill Ronin, they should just be out. Now, there are two things that happen at around the same time here. Clint goes over to Grill's place, the firefighting LARPer who had his suit, and they hang out and have a conversation. Grills mentions that he's got the new suits for Clint and Kate. Pizza Dog makes his appearance because Grills has been taking care of him, which is great. And Clint does want to see them, but in the meantime, he just wants to lay down and rest. At the same time, Kate goes back to her burnt out apartment to apparently pick up some stuff that survived the fire somehow. But Yelena is there. And she's all, kind of chummy and chatty, but makes it very clear that she could have killed Kate if she wanted to. And over a small meal of Kraft macaroni and cheese with hot sauce, Yelena tells Kate that she was hired to kill Clint, although it is partially for her revenge because Clint is responsible for Natasha's death. And, Kate is trying to defend him. Yelena will have none of it. It is kind of a good commentary on heroes, how, some people will perceive them as perfect and can do no wrong, and then there are other people, their victims, or relatives of their victims, or their foes, if you want to call it that, who know better. And what it really all comes down to is that it's a matter of perspective. And then, of course, Yelena tells Kate to stay out of her way and exits the building, rappelling down the side. There's a very short scene the next day where Kate goes back to the penthouse and finds out that Eleanor did look into Jack and had him arrested. He doesn't think anything is going to happen because he's apparently just that kind of level of rich where he believes he can buy his way out of any trouble. Huge surprise. Like, he literally says he'll have it fixed up and be right back in time for her Christmas party. But who knows, Now, at the same time, Clint's down at the Port Authority. There's a memorial down there that says it was erected on the spot where the Avengers first came together. And if you know your MCU history, it's the spot where that first iconic tracking shot of the Avengers was shot. The one where it goes around in a circle like the Hulk roars and everybody's looking up and they're all ready for battle. And if you notice the memorial, Clint's name is last on it, which kind of keeps confirming the theory that even in the MCU, he's the least popular Avenger. But while he's standing there, he has a conversation with Natasha. Because every episode's had an obligatory Natasha reference, and this one's already had a couple, so why not now? And he basically says that he regrets Boromir, and he kind of apologizes for what he's about to do. And then he puts a hood up over his head and he walks away. And stuff's about to get serious with him. Then come a couple of scenes that are kind of funny, kind of not. The first one is Kate leaving multiple messages for Clint, getting angrier and angrier when he doesn't answer her, and obviously deciding that she's going to go off and find him. Next comes the Trust a Bro moving truck, which is still just so funny for me for some reason. The tracksuit mafia guys on the inside, one of them's beatboxing, and then they start talking about, Run DMC, and then characters that look tough in tracksuits. And as they pull into a parking lot of what I believe was the abandoned KB Toys, an arrow comes through the window, and the mafia guy that isn't driving screams like a little girl. But it's just holding a message from Maya, telling her to go to the place where she first met Ronin. Clint calls Laura, and during their conversation, he references the big guy, which we assume is a reference to Kingpin, like the guy who's behind all this. And it kind of seems like he might be saying goodbye in case he doesn't make it back. He points out that, people have been looking for his family. They know about the watch, which is a little weird because the watch has been like a MacGuffin that kind of appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared, then disappeared again. So, don't really know what that's about. And then you see him pull the Ronin suit out of a locker, exactly where he left it. Now, at this spot where Maya saw Ronin for the first time, which is a car lot now, she has an ambush set up with all the tracksuit mafia guys and Kazi there, which of course Clint totally expects. And he takes them out one by one, and then the two of them have a fight, which is the one I referenced earlier. It's not like a huge flashy fight, but it's pretty well done considering Maya has to be at least 15 years younger than Clint, but he is not only holding his own, he's beating her. And they have a conversation, which is mostly him talking and her reading his lips. Sometimes he's signing. He's trying to tell her to stay away from him, or he will kill her, even though he hasn't at this point. And Maya apparently gets sick of him talking and attacks him, but right before she can get him with his own sword, Kate knocks it out of her hand with an arrow from the top of a building nearby, and it doesn't entirely make sense of how she got there, but Clint manages to escape, And then as they're walking away, you get that kind of funny moment like, I bet you're wondering how I found you. You tracked my phone again? Yeah. And he wonders if she even had an exit strategy. She called an Uber. And Cassie comes and finds Maya, and that's where things get a little sideways there, because, what was it? Clint said that, or told Maya that her boss wanted her dad dead, and he was lured to that spot to kill her dad by an informant in the gang. And when Kazi comes up and talks to Maya, she asks him why he wasn't there that night when her father died, because he was part of the gang. And he kind of gives her this half-hearted excuse that she seems to accept, but probably didn't. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little backstabbing going on a little bit later. And this is where we all get what we've been waiting for. We see this one shot of Yelena stalking Eleanor at one point, before cutting to Grill's place, where Clint and Kate are having either breakfast or lunch with him. I don't know exactly what time it is. And Kate's trying to get Pizza Dog to do tricks that Grill's got him to do, before she gets a text from Yelena saying that Yelena knows who hired her, and it was Kate's mom. And she follows it up with a picture of Eleanor talking to Kingpin. There's the Kingpin reveal. He's the big guy. He's the one that's been behind it all the time. And if that's the case, what exactly did Jack have to do with anything? And did Eleanor hire Yelena just to kill Clint and protect Kate? And if so, why was she with Kingpin? Why am I asking questions in such a dramatic, overblown voice? I don't know either. I got a little carried away there. And just as a nice little Christmassy touch, You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch plays over the credits. So, let's add that. Oh, and if you've seen the credits and you know the kind of style that they're in, the last shot of the silhouettes of Clint and Hawkeye, wow, Clint and Kate, excuse me, now look like they're in, Kingpin's shadow. And by the way, it's Kingpin because this is the first time Vincent D'Onofrio is named in the credits. So we're gearing up for a heck of a showdown here, people. And I gotta be honest, even though it was a little formulaic, I can't wait to see what happens. But what do you guys think? How do Eleanor and Kingpin and Jack all mesh together in this? I'd love to know. So, comment below, like, share, subscribe, all the usual stuff. And until next week, when presumably this will be wrapped up, I've been Scott, and this has been an Instant Review, an offshoot of opinions no one cares about. Everyone has opinions. This one was mine.